Revelation 14. The Lamb on Mount Zion, the three angels, and the harvest of the earth. The Lamb and the 144,000. After the beast and its mark, after the long page of coercion and the squeezing out of ordinary life, John lifts his eyes, and the scene changes completely. He looked, and there was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. The contrast is exact and deliberate. The whole world had just been stamped with the name of the beast on hand and forehead. Here is the other company, sealed on the forehead with the name of the Lamb and the Father. The reader is being shown the two marks side by side and asked which name he bears. And John heard a sound from heaven, like the roar of many waters, and like loud thunder. And the sound he heard was like harpists playing on their harps. They were singing a new song before the throne, and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song, except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. A song that only the redeemed can learn. It is not withheld out of secrecy, but because it is the song of those who have come through. You cannot sing it from the outside. It belongs to the experience of having been bought. These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were redeemed from among men as firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. A note on the virgins and the firstfruits. Two words here have been read in two ways, and both readings deserve honesty. The first is parthenoi, virgins. It can mean literal celibacy, and some take this as a company of unmarried martyrs. But the language of sexual defilement runs all through the Old Testament prophets as the image for covenant unfaithfulness, for going after other gods. Israel is the unfaithful bride. Idolatry is adultery. Read that way, these are the ones who kept themselves from spiritual adultery, who would not bow to the beast or take its mark, which is exactly the company the previous chapter was describing. The second word is aparche, firstfruits. In the law, the firstfruits were the first sheaf offered to God as the pledge that the whole harvest belonged to him. To call this company the firstfruits is to say they are not the total crop, but the first installment of it, the down payment that guarantees more to come. That single word quietly anticipates the harvest at the end of the chapter. The first angel, the eternal gospel. Then John saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. The beast had been given authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation. Now the gospel goes out to the very same list. The reach of the good news matches the reach of the beast, point for point. And the angel called out with a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the springs of waters." The summons is the simplest possible alternative to the worship the beast demanded. Worship the maker of the sea, not the beast that rose out of it. And the reason given is urgency, not delay. The hour of his judgment has come, an aorist that lands as accomplished fact. This is the book announcing its own nearness again, the same note struck in its opening lines. The second angel, Babylon fallen. A second angel followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality." It is spoken as though already done. Fallen, fallen. the prophetic past tense for a thing so certain it can be announced before the eye can see it. The name Babylon is dropped here for the first time and left hanging. The chapters ahead will unfold who she is. For now the point is the announcement itself, set against the beast's apparent permanence. The great city, whoever she proves to be, is already as good as fallen. The third angel, the warning against the mark. And a third angel followed, with the loudest and hardest word of the three. If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he too will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, poured out undiluted into the cup of his anger. The image is deliberate and terrible. The beast's followers drink Babylon's wine of immorality. In turn, they will drink God's wine of wrath. And this cup is akratos, unmixed, the strong wine poured without water, full strength. The text does not soften it, and neither will the narrative. Then comes the line the chapter has been building toward, the counterweight to the war the beast was winning in the previous chapter. Here is the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And a voice from heaven said, "Write this: Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them." This is the answer to chapter 13's hardest sentence, that the beast was given power to make war on the saints and to conquer them. The beast can kill them. It cannot harm them. The ones it strikes down are pronounced blessed in the very moment of dying, and their works go with them. Endurance, hypomone, is named again as the shape of the victory, the steady remaining under that does not break. The harvest of grain. Then John looked, and there was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud one like a son of man, with a golden crown on his head, and a sharp sickle in his hand. The figure is the exalted Christ of the book's opening vision, now come to reap. An angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to the one on the cloud, "Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is ripe." So the one seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. A note on the two harvests. What follows is two harvests, grain and grape, and readers reasonably ask whether they are two pictures of one judgment or a saved and condemned split. The text leaves a genuine clue. The grain harvest is reaped by one like a son of man, the figure of Christ, and is described in restrained terms, gathered in. The grape harvest is handed to an angel, and it ends in the winepress of the wrath of God, with blood to the horses' bridles. The grain language can carry the gathering of the faithful, the way Jesus spoke of gathering wheat into the barn. The grape language is unmistakably the treading of wrath, drawn from Joel and Isaiah. So the stronger reading takes them as two distinct harvests, the ingathering of the redeemed and the judgment of the unrepentant, rather than two images of the same act. Both readings have defenders, and the text does not tie the knot beyond all argument. But the shift from Son of Man to angel, and from a ripe field to a trodden press, leans toward two: the harvest of the vine and the winepress. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, he too with a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, the angel who has authority over fire, and called with a loud voice to the one with the sharp sickle, "Put in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle over the earth, and gathered the vintage of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress, as high as a horse's bridle. For a distance, of about 1,600 stadia. This is the oldest judgment image in the prophets. Joel had seen the nations brought down to the valley, and the sickle put in because the harvest was ripe, and the winepress was full. Isaiah had seen one coming from Edom with his garments stained red, treading the winepress alone, the lifeblood of the nations spattered on his robe. John gathers both into one terrible picture. The grapes are trodden, and what runs out is not wine, but blood. A note on outside the city. Two details anchor this to a real place and a real judgment, rather than a vague cosmic scene. The winepress is trodden exothen tes poleos, outside the city. In the prophets and in the gospel, the city, with no other name needed, is Jerusalem, and the place of slaughter and uncleanness lay outside her walls. It is also where the Lamb himself was led out to die. The judgment falls outside the holy city because the city is where the unfaithfulness was. The second detail is the measure, about 1,600 stadia, which is roughly the length of the land of Israel from end to end. The number is not random distance. It says, in the symbolic arithmetic the book favors, that the blood runs the whole length of the land. Read within this book's own setting. The harvest of wrath is the covenant judgment that fell on Jerusalem and the land. The same judgment Jesus had wept over and foretold, now shown to John as a vintage trodden until the land runs red. A note on blood to the horse's bridle. This is the line that tempts readers toward a vast future battlefield, a literal flood of blood deep enough to reach a horse's bridle for 180 miles. The temptation comes from reading a stock image as a survey measurement. The image is older than John and belongs to a recognizable family of Jewish judgment texts, so it is functioning as a conventional figure for catastrophic slaughter, the way we say a bloodbath without measuring its depth. The nearest parallel stands in the book of Enoch, where the day of judgment is described in these words: "The horse shall walk up to the breast in the blood of sinners, and the chariot shall be submerged to its height." That is the same picture John uses, written before him. And there it plainly means a great judgment rather than a literal length. The same image recurs in other judgment writings of the period. When a figure appears this widely across independent texts, it is the idiom of total bloodshed, not a measurement of literal blood depth. The 1,600 stadia confirms the symbolic reading. It is 4 times 4 times 100, the number of completeness squared and multiplied, saying the judgment is total and reaches the whole length of the land. The verse is announcing complete covenant judgment in deliberately symbolic arithmetic, which removes any need to invent a future war to satisfy it. The same note continued. That the image is conventional does not make it empty, and here the historical reality is worth weighing. Because the event this book points to was savage enough that contemporaries reached for this very language. Jewish sources describing the Roman slaughter in Judea use the bridal image as near description rather than mere figure. In the traditional rendering of the rabbinic accounts, the killing was so vast that the horses waded in blood. One caution belongs here for honesty. The most quoted of those rabbinic passages describes the fall of Bethar in the later revolt under Hadrian, a generation after the temple fell, though it is the same long Roman war on the Jews and the same kind of devastation. For the fall of Jerusalem itself in the year 70, the eyewitness Josephus is enough. In his account of the war, Book 5, he writes that the blood of the slain stood in pools in the holy courts. In Book 6, he describes the Temple Hill as if seething with fire, the blood greater in quantity than the flames, the slain more in number than those who killed them, and the ground nowhere visible for the bodies, so that the soldiers ran over heaps of the dead. So the reader can hold both truths at once. The phrase is a traditional idiom of total judgment, which is why no futurist literalism is required. And the judgment it pointed to, the Roman devastation of Jerusalem and the land, was in plain historical fact a thing of blood and fire on a scale almost beyond imagining, which makes the image fitting rather than excessive. Both the idiom and the history converge on the same place, outside the walls of a city under judgment, not on a distant battlefield at the end of the world, just as Jesus prophesied. And there the chapter ends, abruptly on the trodden press. The Lamb stands on Zion with the redeemed who bear his name. The eternal gospel goes out to the same nations the beast had claimed. The dead in the Lord are called blessed, and the ripe earth is reaped, the faithful gathered, and the wrath trodden out to the full. The two companies of the whole vision, those who took the mark and those who kept the faith, are brought at last to their two ends. The beast had its 42 months, the harvest has its hour, and the hour has come.